Okay, welcome to the award ceremony for the IDC 2016 Design and Research Competition. This is obviously a new track. We've never done this before, and it was Janet's idea. So it's all a bit of an experiment, and this session now will be a bit of an experiment as well, because we're trying to Skype Alyssa Antle in as well. He couldn't be here today with us. I've now already told you one of the winners. But instead, one of her students will accept the award and present the paper. What we're going to be doing is I'll talk a little bit through the process of setting up this competition and the idea behind it, because I think it's a quite nice addition to our community and what we do here. And then I'll present the awards, and then the three winners will give you a very quick overview over their crazy ideas that they put into the paper. And if you're not understanding everything, you can read about them also in the proceedings. So the three winners, they're actually being published as part of the proceedings, and will also be available in the ACM Digital Library, which I think is a really nice thing to have. So I think we had the excellent opening keynote by Panos, telling us what might be good ideas of what should be doing in the next 5-10 years. And we thought maybe it's also a very good idea to ask children what we should be doing. And this is probably what kind of drove the whole idea of this design and research competition. So we reached out to a number of schools that researchers and members of this community kind of worked in, and gave them a question. And the question sort of like goes, it is 2030 and schools look rather different in these days. Blackboards, whiteboards and projectors have all gone, and so have tablets, mobile phones and Game Boys. These are smart things of the past. But what are the smart things of 2030? Think about it. How do you learn? How do you play? And how do you keep in touch with others? So we were trying to kind of, it is still a bit of a school setting, but that was sort of like a pragmatic decision to kind of reach into that population. But I think the three big themes emerging from there is learning, playing, and communication. And we kind of tried to get children's idea on these topics. And we had 3 schools who were involved, and that was the Istituto Leonardo da Vinci in Lugano, Switzerland, the Blessed Sacrament School in Preston, UK, and Allendale, I suppose, Allendale Columbia School in Rochester, New York, in the States. And they produced a huge amount of really funny input, and it looked a bit like this. We had, I mean, you're all researchers in IDC, so you know what it looks like when you give children sheets of paper and a lot of pencils, and some of them even produced videos, which was really amazing to see, and presented their ideas, and they came up with a whole host of really amazing things. And then it was us again trying to make sense of it. How do we kind of filter and curate that into challenges that we could actually put out to our community? So we kind of looked through all the materials that came back from the schools, and identified 3 big themes that kind of reoccurred in many of the ideas that children had. And one was about embodied learning, and it was this, sorry, this is loud. And it was this idea, so that there's always a quote and a little bit of a text to that, and design a technology that is situated in school and facilitates embodied and experiential learning. The second one that came up, unsurprisingly probably, was something around robots. There was a lot of robots that looked very strange. There was this idea of companion robots. So design a robot that children interact with, describe its role and why every child in 2030 should have one. And the third challenge, there were a number, I don't know really where this came from, but there were a number of ideas around having something on your hand that would allow you to communicate with others. And you can see a drawing here. Design a communication device for children, communication through your hands. So these were the three challenges, and then we opened the competition with a call into the community and said, researchers, do something with this, designers, practitioners, everyone. Do something with these three challenges, and we got 17 submissions, and I'm quite. It was a bit hard to judge what to expect, and I'm quite pleased actually. I think 17 submissions is quite good for an initial experiment into this. When the submissions came in, it was actually really funny to read them, and most of the submissions really engaged with the theme and the idea of this competition, and it turned out to be a bit like a design fiction writing contest, which here you go, that's the title for next year. So without further ado, I want to announce the top three, the three winners that will have a chance to present their work today to you. Place number 3, the Story of Things, Awareness Through Happenstance Interaction, Alyssa Antle, Brandon Matkin and Jill Warren. Jill, do you want to come up? You get a certificate, of course. Yes.
It's official.
It's very official.
Oh yeah, there's even a 3 right there. Thank you.
Hold on. You know, I'm just giving everybody the certificates.
Oh, okay.
Stay here.
I'll
Stay
just
here.
stand.
Yeah. I'm just looking whether Alyssa is here already. Sorry, I promised to call her. Okay. Let's do that now, maybe. Hi, Alyssa. You there? Can we hear you? Maybe. Can you say something?
Good afternoon, good evening.
Hello. And now I'm showing you the rest of the people. This is a wonderful theatre. Right. And Jill just got a lovely certificate for place number 3. Right. So I'm just continuing with the awards ceremony. Hold on, I'll bring back up my slides. Here we go. Place number 2, RoboTwin, a modular, evolvable robotic companion for children. Dimitris Gramenos. Here you go. Congratulations. There's a word of warning. I think he sent me about 30 slides. Place number 1, all creatures great and small become other organisms through embodied suit. Julian Rader and Alyssa Antle. Congratulations. Thank you. So, what we're going to do is that each winner is... oh, she's up again. You're on the big screen again. All 3 winners have a few minutes to kind of tell you what their submission was about, and we'll start with number 3, and I'll just bring up the Story of Things. Hold on.
Ooh, yes. I can see Alyssa too. That's cute.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't know how I did that.
Secret
But
view.
anyway, okay, Alyssa can't see this slide, so...
I don't know if she can see me, but anyways, hopefully she can hear me. Of course, we are lucky to have Alyssa here by Skype, which we'll actually hear from her later on. But she was awesome enough to provide me with a nice set of notes that, so if I'm looking down, I'm trying to stick to my amazing script that I have. So first of all, we would like to thank you. We're very honored to have been chosen to present our work here, and this was a really fun challenge. The Story of Things concept builds on our lab's history of research and designing tabletop applications for collaborative environmental education. It addresses some of the challenges we faced in this work, and it aligns with the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, which states that children have the right to actively shape the future of the communities they live in. Democratic participation requires an educated population. To actively participate in shaping their world, children must understand not only the facts, but how their lifestyle choices impact the world they live in. They must also feel that they have agency to change the world. The Story of Things system enables children to learn the story behind any object they touch in a typical day. Stories might be about the production, use, and disposal of the materials in that object. So imagine, instead of being told to recycle, they can hold a can of soda. They can access a wealth of information about where the metal came from, how it was made, how it can be recycled, and most importantly, how soda impacts their brain and the world. Story of Things is comprised of 5 modules. The first, a child has stick-on fingertip sensors that sense the materials of each object they touch. Second, the system uses a crowdsourced database connected wirelessly to access data about the object using a pre-compiled neural net. Third, when the child touches an object, this activates a back-of-the-hand touch display. They can ignore it or touch different categories to learn stories about the material object. For example, the materials it was made from, the processes used to make it, how it impacts their body, how it will be disposed of, environmental or social rights challenges associated with the object, and how they can take positive action. Fourth, the results are displayed using augmented reality contact lenses, using a 3D light field display that overlays images onto the world that are practically indistinguishable from real objects. And lastly, a tablet application called Traces collects the history of touches for each day. Story of Things is feasible with technologies currently under development. For example, the back-of-hand display utilizes a flexible e-ink touch display that looks and feels like skin and harnesses body heat for energy. The system can be used in classroom activities, but it can also be used in a way where happenstance interaction increases a child's awareness of the everyday objects and materials that they have not even realized that they have been touching. For example, as a boy walks to school, he may run his hands over the leaves of a plant, pat a dog on the head, run a hand over an iron railing, or pick up an apple from his lunchbox. Let's look at the apple scenario. The back of the hand display is activated when the boy touches the apple in his lunch with the stick-on fingertip sensors. He taps the display and decides to select Impact. Information stored in the crowdsourced database about how the apple impacts his body and the world is seen through his augmented reality contact lens. It tells him that this apple is organic, which means that it isn't introducing toxins into his body, and that it was grown in ways that don't kill insects that are essential to the orchard and the ecosystem. The apple trace is added to his tablet app so he can see this trace at a later time. Even something as simple as eating an apple becomes a learning event. This allows children in real time to better understand the world they currently live in and how their actions and choices can change the world they will live in the future, for better or worse. Our goal with the Story of Things system is to change children's environmental education and awareness through hands-on interaction, contextualized within the world they live in, so they can understand and actively shape the future world that they hope to live in. thank you again for this very fun and exciting challenge, and I look forward to talking more with Alyssa and everyone else later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Put it in. Gotta hold on to it.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. Right. And I'll bring up number 2. No, that's the one. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Some fonts won't do. But other than that, it's not where to go with it now.
I think you can move this one now.
Yeah. Let's try. Which one?
It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, well. Okay, yes.
Is that okay?
Maybe can you slide a little bit? Yes.
Sorry?
Okay, yeah, now can you get it? So it's
Like this?
okay. Can you this one? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Okay, robot twin, Dimitris, shoot off.
Okay, hello, thank you very much. Well, first of all, as some of you may already know, I have developed a design thinking crash course for young children called the Future Designers, where I asked them to do something similar. So when I saw the competition, I felt kind of obliged to try to do it too. So, oops. What if there was a robotic companion that comes to life the day you are born and then grows along with you? And for example, it starts like a plush toy and then becomes a doll, then a robotic pet, and finally like a cool humanoid. And of course, since it is always with you, since day one, it is something like a ubiquitous diary. It is able to recollect every moment of your life and events, even if you don't remember them anymore. As for example, your first words, the names and the faces of all the people or all the friends you've ever made, the first time you fell in love. Wouldn't this be great? Or could it be dreadful? So, here's the problem that I try to solve. If you already look now, and we're like 14 years ahead of 2030, there are so many robots. So probably a child will start with a very small toy, and then he will get a better one, then probably a robotic kit and assemble his own, and then a better, a bigger, a more expensive one. So imagine what we will be like in 2030. And this creates 3 problems. The first, of course, is that every time your child is bored of a robot, you throw away a lot of your money. But along with the money, you throw away a lot of technological parts. So you create a lot of technological garbage, which is so easy, so difficult to recycle. But maybe the worst part of the problem is that with a robot, you throw away all the memories of you, all the programming you had made to it. So it also has an effect to more than just your money or the environment. And as an answer to this problem, I came up with RobotWing and the motto, one life, one robot. So let's see the key characteristics. The first is that it can allow for skeletal growth. The robot is made of a modular skeleton, which is comprising reconfigurable, self-assessed robotic bones, the robones. So when the RobotWing is first bought, you just buy enough raw bones that you can have a skeletal structure similar to the child. And then as the child grows, you add more bones to it. Okay? The only rigid part of the body is the skull. And this is where you have like the brain and the main memory of RobotWing. And of course, if you want to change the shape and the size of the head, it's very easy. You just adjust it through appropriate active and passive add-ons, like this one, or this one, or this one. The next feature is adaptable form and evolving capabilities. So, depending on the age, the skills, needs and preferences of both the child and the parents, the RobotWing can be covered by different skins, like we have a skinnable user interface that change its form. So it's the same skeleton, you just change the outer appearance. And of course, you can add a lot of different add-on accessories, like projectors, sensors, and all this cool stuff. And because the RobotWing is so modular, it allows for some cool things, like having a prosthetic ability. because it is modular, it can lend some of its parts to its owner. And for example, some of them, they can be directly worn, like a 360 vision sensor. You take it from the robot and you wear it. But for the more difficult part, there is a magnetic lightweight exoskeleton. It is weaved into the clothes. So for example, you can lend an extra hand for a while and then you can give it back to the robot. Of course, this also has a lot of potential for kids with special needs and stuff like that. And finally, taking advantage of the cloud, it can have unlimited everlasting memory. It will never forget everything. So what is the main idea behind the robot twin? Is that of a single technological artifact that grows with you. Okay? You can think of it as the opposite of iPhone, that you have to change it every time they add a letter to it and stuff like that. So, of course, there are a lot of technological challenges around it, but if you also look at the paper, most of the parts I described there, people are working on them, and I'm pretty sure by the 2030, we will be able to create something like this, maybe earlier than that. And maybe there are also some industrial design challenges about how you make the bond, stuff like that. But as a designer, I'm mostly interested in some fundamental ethical and philosophical question that something like this, but also a lot of similar technologies raise. So I will just get you through some of the main questions. For example, will there be a limit regarding the skeletal growth capabilities and powers of robot twin? Can I create something like with 20 arms, like multi-tentacles? Will it lend an add-on to a child to inflict harm? Because the other child said something to me, I'm getting an extra hand and I'm hitting him. Will parents have unrestricted access to all private data of their children and then until age? And who else? Will the robot snitch on a child about something wrong that he has done? And it will tell to his parents, to the police, to the rest of the robots? And how much dependent will children grow up on it? They will rely just on the components that the robots gives to them? Is it possible that it might replace human friends? It's so close to you, it's always there, and it can do so many cool stuff. What will be the effect of a robot's loss to a child's psyche? It's more like a brother. That's like an alter, actually, it's less like a twin, it's more like an alter ego, but calling it robot alter ego was not that cool, so I went for a robot twin. And maybe the most important and difficult question is, what happens to a robot twin when its owner dies? It's like a person. Do you take it at home and then you keep it so you remember of your lost person, stuff like that? So this was my idea about robot twin, one life, one robot, maybe one life, one mobile phone, stuff like that. It can catch on. So thank you very much. And if you allow me just a small final notice. Some people in here already know about it. If you're interested in a very crazy project about an idea traveling to schools all around the world, please come and find me or send me an email. Okay? Thank you very much.
So, have the build up now, and it's the winner's time.
Hello. The winner will also be reading from his notes. It's again an honor to be here once again today. Hi, Alisa. This submission was made because both me and Alyssa are interested in embodiment, and so we got together to do something fun working together. Embodiment is about how children's cognition is shaped by experiences in an environment. And that was the core of our idea, in combination with the fact that learning is really beneficial when it happens in conjunction between experiences and reflection, when that back and forth happens. And so we were interested to know what happens, how can we make it possible for a child to not only learn about an organism, but to actually learn about how it feels to be that organism. And so it's connected to this, the idea that you can experience things by being inside of the Umwelt, of the environment of an organism, which is really different than experiencing things as a human looking at an organism. So the system that we proposed has 3 components. The first one is a typical virtual reality bodysuit. So imagine a child wearing an Oculus Rift with, so it's a virtual headset with gloves that can provide tactile input, temperature input. We can also generate smells through it, and the child can also be walking around. So current technology allows us to already do this and immerse children into virtual worlds. So for example, with current technology, we could potentially do this where the child would be experiencing the virtual view of a virtual ant traveling through an ecosystem. Our next component here is everything working? Sounds good? Okay. Oh, it's just like doing status. Okay. So that's the first system. It's a bodysuit which the child wears in order to experience something, in order to be teleported into the world of something, an organism or a simulation. With something like this, you can do things where the child becomes an ant, or becomes an electron, or becomes anything that can be built in a virtual experience. Now, we also envisioned having a physical system. So, for example, having a little terrarium in a classroom in which you have this ecosystem with earth, with plants, with ants, and in that ecosystem, we can put 3D tracking devices and 3D scanning devices so that we can know exactly where each ant is at any point in time. And based on that, we can actually scan the position of an ant and feed it into the user so that the user now, instead of just looking at a virtual projection in a virtual world, they can actually experience what it looks like from being one of those ants, or being any organism within that ecosystem. And then we took it a step further, which was, well, what if we could put the child inside of that system and allow them to be able to control something? So we inserted a robot, and so our third component is a little robot that is mapped into the bodysuit that the child is wearing. And so now the robot is the size of an ant. The ant moves around. The other ants treat it as a local ant because it smells like an ant, it moves like an ant, it's the size of an ant. And now the child has become a member of that ant colony. And so we can do a certain kinds of mappings between, for example, the child's hand movements. We can map them to the antennas of the ant. We can map the chemical sensors in the robot into the smell generators of the child so that the child can actually be moving the antennas and smelling the pheromones in the environment. And obviously things like we can map the child's leg movements into the ant's movements. So that way we get a coupling between the little robot and the child. So now the child has become an ant. It's a two-way feedback system. So let me just scan my notes here to make sure that I got everything. So yes. So now for one scenario, imagine that the terrarium is in a classroom and the children take a cookie and put it in the terrarium. So you can see up there, there's a cookie placed on the right side of that terrarium. Now, the children who put that in there, only they know the location of that cookie while the other ants are kind of rolling around in the ecosystem. And what we can do is we can get so the ants are going to be rolling around. We can have robot ants that are mapped to a few children in the classroom. And in that way, the children can actually lead the real ants and leave pheromone trails or kind of nudge them along to get to the cookie. So in this sense, the children are now becoming a member of the ant colony, and they can learn very interesting things, such as ant communication through pheromones. There's certain species of ants in which an ant, once it finds a food source, comes back to the anthill, and then other ants start following it. So depending on how the ant walks, if it's close enough to other ants, the ants are going to be led to the food source based on touch. So we can actually do this with this robot system, where if the robot is being touched by other ants, we can feed that to the child so that the child knows that other ants are touching and he can or she can lead them to the food source. So we can do those kind of experiments. The children can also learn about small-scale physics, such as if the robot can lift leaves, just like an ant would do, or emergent activities like habitat building or finding food sources or things like that that ants are really good at. And with this kind of system, we can actually do really interesting new kinds of classroom inquiries. So for example, we can get students to do experiments where they change the way they walk and they see if the ants are following them, or they change the way they place the pheromones on the ground and see how the ant colony responds. And so multiple students doing this at the same time, you could really interestingly see how the ant colony optimizes itself depending on these new behaviors. And then in another, even more futuristic use case, we can imagine that we can make robots that are the size of a bacteria, and in the same way, a child could be controlling that bacteria robot. Currently, there's actually people who work on nanoscale robots, and so it might be possible that in the near future, this will actually be a reality. And something interesting that's interesting in this scenario is that birds have this really interesting one-way lungs system where the air flows in only one way through their lungs. But that may be a difficult thing to teach children. So we thought it might be interesting to put the children inside of the bird. So we can make the child basically become the size of that bacterium and then be able to control that bacterium. So for example, the bird could be getting close to a bird feeder, and as soon as it gets close, these little robot bacterium are released into the air, and then they enter the bird, and as soon as that happens, the child can actually see the view of the bacterium as it travels through the pathways inside of the bird. And obviously, there wouldn't be any light or any way to measure that, but we imagine that the robots could have some sort of 3D scanners in order to be able to detect the environment and also annotate things. So for example, as they travel, they could show you a little heads-up map of where you are inside of the bird respiratory system, or if the bacteria is small enough, it could potentially get absorbed into the lungs and enter into the bloodstream. And in that case, you learn about heart circulation and antibodies, and the system could be annotating that as the bacteria travels and maybe as antibodies attach to it. So there's some really interesting learning experiences that could happen there. And again, we can do interesting sort of science experiments where different kids are controlling different kinds of bacteria and seeing what kind of features get attracted to the antibodies, how different bacteria travel at different speeds through the respiratory system, things like that. And so that's it in terms of scenarios. Now, there are some really interesting research opportunities which would be created with these kind of systems. And there's three kinds that we've classified them under. So there's learning opportunities for research where there's a question of what kind of novel classroom inquiry activities we can create with this. There's also a question of how do you balance between children experiencing these organisms versus reflecting on what they're learning. Also things like, if you're immersed within the organism, how much are you abstracting about what you're learning? And related to that is observing what happens in a system versus being able to physically interact in that system. And then there's things like effects on, like long-term effects on children's empathy, teamwork, knowledge retention and transfer, things like that. There's a lot of questions that this kind of learning system could enable. And there's questions about interaction. So this system allows us to map a human being into another organism, but there are questions like that, such as if the organism has 8 legs, how do we map that into the human? If the organism has directional smell sensors, how do we map that? There's kind of really tricky questions. There's also a question of the richness of, so once you are inside of an organism, there's an extremely rich experience that we could generate inside of the children. Now, how do we guide them to be learning and understanding what that organism is like without kind of overwhelming them? Then there's also questions of long-term immersion, such as does this cause fatigue? Does this cause motion sickness? Things like that. How does this impact children being humans if they spend too much time being other organisms? And then there's also questions of scale. So can we, at what different kinds of scales can we create these kind of learning experiences? So can we put the child into the size of an electron and simulate that? What happens then? Can we put the child to act as a tectonic plate or some giant structure? And what happens then? How do we do those mappings? And then finally, and most importantly, there are ethical issues, such as is it ethical to enter another organism for the purpose of science? How do we keep children from abusing the organisms that they're interacting with? What happens to these robots once the children do not use them? So for example, with this bacteria robot, what happens because it's now inside of the bird? And then there's also psychological effects in which we don't know how children are going to be reacting to these kind of experiences. And so for next steps, I feel like the educational experiences, the research should look into educational experiences for telerobotics. There's actually an interesting project in which these people in Japan currently have built a way of simulating a child. So basically an adult can put on a VR headset and the cameras on the eyes map into a small scale, a camera that's at a small height, and they have these gloves too. So it's possible to do these kind of things and to also do kind of remote controlled robots in different environments. What kind of educational experiences can we make with these? Then there's also a question of we could even currently be developing immersive technology for the classroom. So these walk-in-place treadmills and virtual reality headsets and augmented reality is possible to do in classrooms. Now, we could be doing that right now and researching the kinds of educational experiences that we could build for that. Either single player, single user, multi-user, or even remote. And then finally, I think the biggest challenge with this idea is miniaturization, so getting these robots as small as possible. But it's possible currently to do this with larger robots. And then collaborating between multiple people. So yeah, thank you very much, and thanks to the judges. Thanks to Elisa for being here.
Thank you. Alyssa, I put you back up on the big screen now, and I'm going to turn my computer around so that you can see the audience. Let's see whether that works. Somehow. Is that okay? Perfect. Right. So before we do a bit of a discussion on this. I also want to thank Beth Bonsignori. Where is she? She promised me to be up on stage, but she kind of opted out for this. Who was my co-chair for this. Thank you very much for all your help, particularly in the later stages of this. I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit about the process and ask participants, what did you get out from doing this, and how did you approach this challenge, and how do you think this challenge kind of can contribute to formulating research agendas, or look a bit further into what we could be doing in the next 10 years. So I think maybe Alyssa, if could we start with you? Yeah. Let's see. Hold on a second. Yeah. Where's that sound? Do we have that sound? Can we maybe start with you, Julian, and then I'll get the sound sorted out.
Sure. So in terms of process, it was really interesting because me and Alyssa are in completely different points in time, points in space, and different time zones. She is one of my committee members, but we've never never actually kind of collaborated besides just getting reviews on pieces, which is not really a collaboration. But so the process was actually really interesting because we were both interested in embodied cognition, and so we both kind of came at this wanting to do something together. And we kind of brainstormed on our own, and our ideas were kind of really convergent. And so from the initial meeting, we started narrowing down extremely into this one concept. There's also a microphone. So I feel like in terms of the synergy is really great. I feel the value, for me at least, it was being able to explore the possibility of a collaboration without a high amount of sort of risk and effort attached to it. So being able to do an idea for a design competition requires two people to be really creative together without a lot of...
It works.
Everyone's awake now.
Yeah, that's what I will do.
I will just wait.
So we gave everybody a big scare. Everybody awake now?
No part.
Hi, Alisa. Still can't hear you.
How's that?
Yes, we start hearing you.
Great. That helps.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so let me just, I guess, can I just finish
Yeah,
what I was
just
saying?
go on and finish.
So for me personally, I feel like it was a really great buzzing sensation. It was really great to be able to do a creative activity in kind of like a low-risk environment. So me and Alisa have never actually so deeply collaborated on anything except getting thesis revisions. And so it was really great to be able to see what kind of things we can create together and to kind of test out our different styles of interaction. I think what really helped is, so initially we both kind of converged from our individual brainstorming sessions. We converged on this one topic and we kind of agreed on it really well together. I think what really helped is Alisa created a structure for the paper, so kind of like a skeleton in which we both worked independently. So that really helped to have a structure to work into, and then just the fact that we can collaborate on something without being tied to the constraints of current day technology is really interesting, because we can envision a near-term future in which both of us kind of know how to get there. And now that we've thought about it pretty deeply without being constrained with current technology, we can actually start moving in that direction. So for me, it was interesting from the collaboration standpoint of just kind of testing out the waters of how to collaborate with somebody that I feel both me and I are interested, me and Alisa are interested in kind of really similar topics related to embodiment. And so being able to test that collaboration as well as being able to put a stake in the ground and being able to move toward it, I think was very useful.
Can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
We're already
Yeah,
10
yeah.
minutes over. But I really want, now I hope the sound is working. Alyssa, tell us something about how you felt about the process and what you think we can get out of this.
Yeah, okay. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, great. First of all, I really enjoyed this process, so I want to thank you for putting it together. I definitely think you should do it. So often, we don't get that opportunity, I think, to, as Julian said, to really not worry about how am I going to build it, how am I going to make it robust enough that kids won't break it, how am I going to run the field study. None of that. It was just the ability to think about how can we combine these emerging technologies in a way that can solve some really big problems that we see in the world for kids right now. And so you notice that both of my entries have scenarios. And so we really came at it from that point of view. So much work in HCI is technology driven. And this really gave us a chance to be concept driven. And the stakes were really low. It was super fun. It didn't take a lot of time to do it. So we were really able to do that. I think one of the values is the beauty of being able to do a proof of concept, something like Alan Kay's 1968 Dynabook, which became a laptop, but the stakes were so low, we just had to think about it, write about it, and sketch it, and be able to explain it to the judges. And it enabled us to really get out of the box and think about how we could really help kids. And hopefully our work will inspire other people to sort of stretch their thinking a little bit as opposed to being constrained by current technology.
Thank you. Could we maybe try for Dimitris?
Okay.
Say briefly, I think we're sort of like a bit
Okay,
running
try
over,
to
but
be very brief. Yeah, first of all, it was fun and interesting, and since I was by myself, I had no one to collaborate, so the process was rather straightforward. But for me, probably the most interesting part is that, I tweaked what we had to do, because we had to do a robot companion for children, and I created something for everyone. But I think that also this gave me some insight on other stuff that we do. Because there's this idea of specialization, so when you don't have something, let's say for example, we don't have mobile phones for children, let's create a mobile phone for children. And this goes to the direction where we have a lot of stuff for a lot of different users who create a lot of junk, instead of trying to make the best possible use of what we have. So I started with the classic way. Okay, I found out what robots are there, what they do, what is missing, so what extra can I do? And finally came up that the problem is not that there are not enough robots out there to be companions, but the problem was that there are too many robotic companions out there. So it was the other way around. And I think it's a very common pattern when you're designing technologies. So maybe this is what I gained out of this process, that sometimes it's not finding what does not exist, but it exists so many of it. So these are my 2 cents out of the process.
Jill, do you want to add something?
I mean, other than what Alyssa already said, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think that the process was much different than being in the trenches doing your thesis or PhD work and, coursework and all of that. So as a grad student, I found the process really fun and rewarding. It just gave you kind of a light breath of fresh air in the depth of all of the work that you're normally focusing on. So, one of the biggest things that we were a bit worried about at first is, should we take the time to take this challenge on, even though it seems really fun? And I think in the end, once Alyssa had some really great ideas and provided a nice structure for us to all be thinking about a similar problem together, the collaboration actually went really smoothly, and it was just a really fun process overall. So I would definitely do it again.
I want to just very briefly maybe ask the audience whether they had a burning question for either me or one of the winners. Is there anyone? If not, I think we've got the conference dinner coming up anyway. So grab one of the winners and tell them that you've solved it already in your backyard, and you've got the mini robots and everything else you would need to kind of do it. So probably it's just me saying that this process was great fun. We read a lot of really good entries. It was hard to pick out 3. Congratulations. And I hope future organizers kind of are encouraged to kind of do something like that again, because I think it's this thinking outside the box and projecting things into the future that might be impossible now, that kind of opens up new ideas for what we do today. So thank you very much, everybody, and congratulations again to the winners.
Thank you.